Artemis program, is there something strange on the moon? Imagine waking up on a February morning in 2026 and turning on the television to see something humanity hasn't witnessed in over 50 years. Astronauts preparing to fly toward the moon. Not to orbit Earth, not for a routine mission to the International Space Station, but to actually go to the moon. Sounds like science fiction. Well, that's exactly what's about to happen. NASA has a plan, an ambitious, complex, and absolutely fascinating plan called the Artemis Program. And if everything goes well, we're just a few years away from witnessing humanity's return to our natural satellite. But the big question everyone wants to know is, when exactly will this happen? Let's dive into this epic journey that's being planned at this very moment while you're watching this video. First, you need to understand that we're not talking about a single mission. Artemis isn't an isolated event. It's an entire program, a series of carefully planned missions, each with its own purpose and challenges. And it all began just a few years ago, in November 2022. On that historic date, NASA launched Artemis 1, an uncrewed mission that tested two crucial components, the powerful Space Launch System rocket, or SLS, and the Orion capsule. For 25 days, Orion traveled more than 2 million kilometers, went around the moon, and safely returned to Earth, landing in the Pacific Ocean. It was a resounding success. The systems worked. The heat shields protected the capsule during the fiery re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. And most importantly, NASA proved it had the basic technology necessary to send humans beyond low Earth orbit for the first time in decades. But that was just the beginning. The real test is coming. Artemis 2 will be the program's first crewed mission, and here things get truly exciting. The official launch date is scheduled for April 2026, but there's a real possibility it could happen even earlier, in February of the same year. We're talking about just a few months in the future. 4 astronauts are part of this historic crew. Reed Wiseman, the mission commander, a veteran who has already flown to the International Space Station; Victor Glover, pilot, and the first African-American designated for a lunar mission, a historic choice that corrects a 50-year injustice; Christina Koch, who holds the record for the longest spaceflight by a woman, with 328 days in orbit; and Jeremy Hansen, a Canadian astronaut, representing the Canadian Space Agency in this international endeavor. These 4 explorers will climb atop the giant SLS rocket, standing at an impressive 98 meters tall. They'll orbit Earth twice, checking all systems, and then, doing something no human has done in over half a century, they'll head for the moon. But here's the important detail. They won't land. Artemis 2 is a reconnaissance mission, a flight around the moon that will last about 10 days. The Orion capsule will pass approximately 10,000 kilometers from the lunar surface, taking these astronauts farther from Earth than any human has ever traveled in history. Think about that for a moment. Farther than the Apollo astronauts, more distant from our planet than anyone who has ever lived. And during this flight, they'll have a unique opportunity to see parts of the far side of the moon that no human eye has ever directly observed. Christina Koch described this moment with palpable emotion. For approximately 3 hours, with perfect lighting, they'll be able to observe details of the lunar surface that exist only in photographs taken by robotic probes. It will be a sight that will belong only to them and to the future generations that follow in their footsteps. But the mission isn't just about space tourism. Artemis 2 is a crucial test of all the life support, navigation, communication, and safety systems that will be needed for subsequent missions. The astronauts will conduct experiments to study the effects of deep space radiation on the human body, test new medical equipment, and collect fundamental data on how our bodies react to being so far from home. And then, after this triumphant journey around the moon, they'll return to Earth, landing in the Pacific Ocean near San Diego. They'll be heroes. They will have paved the way for what comes next. And what comes next is absolutely spectacular. Artemis 3 is the mission everyone is waiting for. It's when astronauts will finally walk on the lunar surface again. And here the story gets more complicated, because this mission involves technologies that have never been tested before and challenges that are provoking heated debates in the halls of NASA and the world of space exploration. Originally, NASA planned to conduct Artemis 3 as early as 2027, but recently worrying rumors have emerged that the actual date may be postponed to 2028 or even beyond. Why? The answer lies in one of the most ambitious and controversial rockets ever built, SpaceX's Starship.
But there is a problem. Several, actually. Starship is a revolutionary craft, but also incredibly complex. In 2025, SpaceX conducted 5 test launches, and the first 3 failed, with the loss of the upper stage. Only the last 2 were successful. And even these successes are just initial steps in a much more difficult journey. To function as a lunar lander, Starship needs to master a technology that has never been attempted at orbital scale: cryogenic refueling in space. The craft consumes all its fuel just reaching Earth orbit. To travel to the moon, it will need to be refueled in space, not once, but up to 12 times by specialized tanker ships. Imagine the complexity. An orbital fuel station needs to be positioned first. Then, multiple tanker ships need to launch, one after another, each transferring supercooled liquid fuel to the station. Finally, the lunar Starship needs to dock and receive all this fuel before departing for the moon. It's a precise and dangerous orbital dance that has never been executed before. And, according to leaked internal SpaceX documents, the company plans to test orbital refueling for the first time only in June 2026. The first uncrewed lunar landing test is scheduled for June 2027. If both tests are successful, Artemis 3 could launch in September 2028, more than a year after NASA's official timeline. This has caused a political storm in Washington. NASA's acting administrator, Sean Duffy, expressed frustration publicly, saying that SpaceX is behind schedule and that the United States is in a race against China, which plans to land taikonauts on the moon by 2030. Duffy even threatened to open the contract to other companies, such as Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin, which is developing its own lunar lander. It's a tense situation. Elon Musk, SpaceX's CEO, responded aggressively, insisting that Starship remains the only viable option and that the company is working on a simplified mission architecture to accelerate the process. But here's the hard truth. Delays in ambitious space programs are the norm, not the exception. The Apollo program faced tragedies and setbacks. The space shuttle was repeatedly delayed. The International Space Station took much more time and money than planned. The difference this time is that we have social media, 24-hour news, and a public consciousness much more informed about the technical challenges involved. Every failed Starship test is broadcast live to millions of people. Every delay is reported globally. But despite the challenges, despite the delays, despite the technical and political complexities, one thing is absolutely clear. We're going back to the moon. It's not a question of if, but when. And we're not just visiting. The Artemis program has much more ambitious goals than Apollo ever had. NASA plans to establish a permanent and sustainable presence on and around the moon. Artemis missions 4 and 5, already planned for the early 2030s, will carry components to build the Gateway, a space station that will orbit the moon. It will be an outpost where astronauts can live and work for extended periods, conducting research and serving as a departure point for deeper explorations. Artemis 7 plans to deliver a lunar habitation vehicle, essentially a mobile home for the moon's surface, allowing astronauts to remain on the satellite for weeks or even months at a time. And all this lunar infrastructure, all this knowledge and experience has an even grander final objective: Mars. The moon is the training ground. It's where we'll learn to live and work on another world, to extract resources, to grow food in hostile environments, to build sustainable habitats far from Earth. And then, armed with that knowledge and experience, in the 2030s or 2040s, we'll take the next great leap, a crewed mission to the red planet. So when will NASA return to the moon? If everything goes perfectly, Artemis 2 will take humans to lunar orbit in February or April 2026. Artemis 3, the actual landing mission, will likely happen between 2027 and 2028, depending on Starship's progress and other technical challenges. But here's what's really important. For the first time in over 50 years, we have a concrete plan, real funding, technology and active development, and astronauts training right now to walk on the moon again. The generation that watched Neil Armstrong take that first small step in 1969 never imagined it would take so long to return. But the current generation, you who are watching this video now, will see not only the return to the moon, but humanity's establishment as a truly spacefaring civilization. Eugene Cernan's footprints, the last man on the moon, have waited alone for over half a century. But soon, very soon, they'll have company. And this time, these footprints won't be from temporary visitors, but from pioneers establishing a permanent home on another world. The clock is ticking. The rockets are being built. The astronauts are training. And the moon, which has watched us silently throughout all of human history, is about to become not just a distant destination we admire in the night sky, but part of humanity's permanent sphere of influence. The next era of space exploration isn't coming. It has already begun. And you, dear viewer, are lucky enough to be alive to witness it. The moon awaits us, and we're finally ready to accept the invitation. Did you enjoy this video? Leave your like, leave your hype, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also leave your comment about the topic discussed or your suggestion. A big hug, and see you in the next video.